Steven Meserve joins us from 100 Degree Hockey to discuss what he's seen in the first few weeks of camp and the preseason, and we'll take a deeper look at the Texas Stars next on Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erickson, former producer, 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. For the first time, at least is my understanding, Steven Meserve joins us from 100 Degree Hockey. He is a writer and an editor of 100 Degree Hockey, and I'm so glad we could get him on. It's a long time coming. It should have happened multiple months ago, but we got him now right before a brand new season of Texas Stars hockey. So Steven, thank you so much for hopping on Locked On Stars. And how you been? I know it's probably pretty busy as you get ready for another brand new hockey season.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, of course, Joey. And it's going to be a great season here in Texas. There's a lot of players that fans are getting to see in Dallas who both on the have been in Texas, and I've been getting to see those guys for years, which is a lot of fun. But also some really exciting prospects that I'm sure we'll talk about who are going to spend time in Texas. We're going to continue to develop under the tutelage of Neil Graham and some former Texas Stars, Travis Moore and Max Fortunas, who are the assistant coaches here, continuing to grow. So lots of excitement. We're about 2-3 weeks here away from the opening night against the Henderson Silver Knights, a team that Texas has never played before. So it's going to be a really exciting season to get started.
Oh, yeah, we're going to jump into all those exciting prospects for sure. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So a very general question to start us off. Who stood out to you in the first few weeks of camp in the preseason? Anybody that's just jumped off the screen at you over the last few weekends?
It's definitely, it's going to sound a little rote, but it is what it is. Lian Bichsel has been doing the work, yes. Really showing up the way that I think all Stars fans certainly hoped that he would. It was an interesting year for him last year with Texas, right? Because he only played a handful of games before he departed. And he left, he played his last game end of November there, beginning of December, and went back to Sweden. And it turns out that worked out pretty well for him, right? He got to go really deep. They played in the play-in series there in Sweden. They have a play-in opportunity. The 9-10 teams play. And he went all the way to the championship. They lost, but I mean, that's a pretty good result for a team that was on the bubble. And he got a lot of experience. Talking to Alex Petrovic at the end of the year last year when they were in those final games against Edmonton, he said that what he saw from Bichsel in the Milwaukee series, which was the final series that Texas played, he just came back more confident, more, owning his game, I guess is a good way to say it. And he's, as we've seen, started to do that in the preseason. I still think he's going to start in Cedar Park. Excited about that as an opportunity to watch him in person. I think what good model to think about in terms of this is John Klingberg. John Klingberg, if you remember, played in Europe that last season, and then came over, played again a handful of games, low double digit number of games, and then got called up November to December and never came back. Speaking of players from Europe, another player who's certainly been impressive and I think might have an opportunity to break through is Oscar Beck. Oscar Beck has had been in the system for a few years. It's kind of funny with these European prospects. These are guys who you hear their names for years and years. They get drafted, 2018 or something like that, and they're over in Europe and playing in the SHL or playing in Finland or something. And then finally they come over. It feels like they've been in the system for 10 years.
Yeah.
But Oscar's one of those guys, and it sounds like he's in the mix for that 13th forward spot. Which I don't know that he was quite there last year. There was a lot more veteran levels of trust in that 13th forward. They were looking for veterans. There's Ty Dellandrea in the mix as well. Oscar's one of those guys who could have an opportunity to come in and be that 13th forward. And he fits the role really well because he's a defensively responsible player. He can win faceoffs. He's the kind of guy who can come and win faceoffs. He can play PK. And that's the kind of role that you need in that bottom six, fourth line type of role. I think he's built for it, and this might be his season.
Yeah, sounds like Radek Faksa.
It does.
Yeah, a guy that just wins draws and he can PK and he's reliable for you. And I've liked his game in the first couple of preseason games. We've gotten a look at him. I know
Absolutely.
Blue Mel's going to be kind of in that mix. And man, I'm on the Bichsel bandwagon at this point. I'm knocking on the door. I love the foundation of his game right now. He may need a season in the AHL or a few months like Stankoven did, but I think the foundation is there. And I use this comparison. I'm not saying he's going to be this player, but he's got like Victor Hedman vibes because he's just big.
Yeah.
He can move and he's still skillful. I'm really, really excited that he's going to be over in Texas and we'll get a look at him a bit more consistently. And man, if he can hit for the Stars, it looks like he's already a good pick, but if he can be an impactful, like top 4 defenseman for you for the next decade, man, the Stars did it again.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, he's not right-handed, though, right?
That's always a challenge.
Yeah,
right?
he always needs those righties.
Yeah, he's definitely though got that edge. And playing in the AHL last year, he started to bring that out. Came back for that Milwaukee series. He played those 5 games and just, it showed dominance in a way that he had not. He was good. Believe me, in October, November, he was good, but there were still some rough elements. He really shaved off the edges, and I think. Getting the opportunity to work through Dallas camp, having had that professional season in North America, parts of it, even if he goes down to the AHL, it's so close. He's so close. And the leadership and the way that team has grown and developed players, like you look at what they did with Thomas Harley, right? Thomas Harley came in and he was very raw, to be honest. We got to see him in a bit of a weird situation because there was no OHL during the COVID year.
Yeah.
And so he came in and played 36 games in the AHL here before he was supposed to, because there's sort of a de facto 20-year-old age limit to be in the AHL if you're drafted out of the major junior system. He wasn't ready, right, for the NHL. But now he's being mentioned in, these conversations about, he's a really high quality defenseman for the Dallas Stars, a guy that they want to lock down for a long time. It's because they broke down his game and rebuilt it in the American Hockey League. And so that's something that having your high quality American Hockey League affiliate is invaluable for things like that.
I am curious, since you've been around the Texas Stars for over a decade now, so you see guys that get called up and called back down. And Dallas has this good problem right now in their organization where they just don't have a lot of spots available. They're pretty loaded up front and on the back end for the most part, maybe not quality wise, but they have bodies. So I'm curious from your perspective, maybe how that works into the mindset of a player like maybe back or Matej Blumel, where it can be really tough to get that 13th forward spot. Maybe not going to play every night up in the big leagues, but knowing that the AHL is possibly the best option for them right now to just continue to develop, and they have to wait to get their shot. Can that be difficult for a player? I'm just curious, like being around the locker room, the players, how that can be frustrating at points, but they just have to learn to kind of go with emotion. And this is just where the Stars are right now, currently with the roster.
It's a mindset thing for the players. And I think there have been players in the past, I think of a couple in particular who 10 years ago or so, it would come down after they'd get a cup of coffee, they'd play maybe a game or something like that. They'd come back to the AHL, rightfully so. They weren't ready yet. But there was a little bit of moping, a little bit of pouting, right? And their game would sort of, it wasn't good for a couple of games, and they had to kind of get remotivated. I think there's been a bit of a culture shift. I haven't seen as much of that moping or sulking or pouting or whatever word you want to use for it in recent history. I think Jim Nill has built this culture of like just the ability to promote that your time is coming. We'll treat you well. The AHL experience is not a backwater also. They've really elevated the way that team is run and managed. They've got great number of coaches. They've got great facilities. Be 20 years ago, you'd be going to who knows where, and it's a really different experience to be in the AHL. The AHL has grown and matured as a league, and has it's not like this major demotion in the same way that it used to be. Additionally, they've shown that they will trust some of these internal upgrades at times, and they know that Scott White's line that he's given me for the last 15 years is it's up to the player to make a tough decision, right? If we're December 1st and Lian Bichsel is playing absolute lights out hockey in Cedar Park, he's going to force Scott White, Jim Nill to make a tough decision. Do we sit Colin Blackwell? Not Colin Blackwell. Excuse me. Do we sit Brendan Smith?
Yeah.
Or send him down? Risk sending him through waivers? What do we do? Right. But that's on the player, and that meritocracy level of vibe that has been set from the top. That is a really solid way to run the organization. And I think it shows through all the levels.
And we saw that with Stankoven a bit. I know it was a bit different with the Stars having some injuries to Dodonov and Sagan at the time, but Stankoven was lighting it up. And it was like, okay, he needs to come up. And frankly, he would have been up earlier, I think. But the Stars, with their cap situation, weren't able to make that work. And that always is something that's in play as well.
I'll give you an example. Like Mavrik Bourque, he won the AHL MVP last year, right?
Yes.
And a lot of time, the AHL MVP is not won by a prospect. Prospect. I'll put that in air quotes, right? Because it's won by more of what you call a quad A player. It's a word that we use that's pulled over from the baseball lexicon, where like a player that's maybe too good for AAA, so the AHL level, but they're not quite good enough to play in the NHL consistently. Quad A. A great example, Travis Morin was a quad A player, right? He was great at the AHL level. He won the AHL MVP. He won the playoff MVP. His number is retired here in Cedar Park, all of those things. But his role that he carved out for himself here in Cedar Park was not available to him in Dallas. He wasn't a power play specialist, all those sorts of things. So that situation with him winning the MVP, partly the reason why that doesn't happen is because those prospects get called up to the NHL club, right? They don't get a chance. Think about Stankoven last year. Halfway through the season, he was lighting it up over a point per game, and they said, "Oh, well, we got to get this guy up." Same thing maybe should have happened to Mavrik Bourque in a less loaded system, but and Bourque, by all accounts, could have had any right to pout and do all those things you talked about.
Yeah.
But he made an ask to Jim Nill. He said, "Look, I just want one game before the end of the regular season, one game to see if I'm ready to get the feel, to shake any nerves out or anything like that." And he gave it to him. He got that one game, and he went right back to the AHL after that one game. But that's an example of making an ask, making a promise, getting that, and then that builds trust in the organization. It's a really good way to see, because I'm sure we could probably name off a bunch of different examples of the situations where that didn't happen, right? Prospects that are not given the care and feeding that they deserve and that they ought to get, and they go elsewhere in the NHL and have success. Dallas is showing that this is the right way to do it, and it means that Mavrik Bourque is ready to be a full-time contributor with that full season under his belt in the AHL, being the MVP, leading the entire league in points.
Absolutely. I can't wait to watch him and Stankoven together.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be like the Sedin twins. Maybe they just have to be together for the rest of their career. I'm gonna ask you a bit more about him, and I also want to ask you about Kyle Capobianco. He's an exciting player that's coming into the Texas organization as well, and we'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by Indeed. You need to hire, you need Indeed. They're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Just match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. It's the matching and hiring platform. Over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, messaging, and you can connect with candidates faster. More than 3.5 businesses worldwide, 3.5 million, I should say, use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed. Indeed.com/lockedon. Go ahead and go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. You need to hire. You need Indeed. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events easier. We've all been there before. Go to a new arena, you go to a new ballpark, you get your seats, you get there, and then there's a pole, there's a piece of glass in your way, and you're like, I would have never bought those if I had known that. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying tickets. It shows you the view of your seat before you get there, and you get all the great deals. It takes away all that fluff and you can find the exact tickets you want. It takes the guesswork out of buying tickets, and that's the best thing about Game Time. So download an account, create the account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time. It's on the App Store, on the Google Play Store. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKED, own NHL. That's Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Alrighty, so you alluded to it just before we stepped aside, and I have to ask you about Mavrik Bourque. What is he going to bring to the Dallas Stars? You watched him consistently, and oh yeah, he was the AHL MVP last year.
Oh yeah,
he looks like he's going to have a really nice NHL career. What is it about his game that made him so dominant last season, and what are some of those characteristics that you think are really going to stand out at the NHL level?
Yeah, honestly, the thing that I have consistently noticed about Mavrik Bourque from the first game that he played, which, by the way, he played a couple of ATO games a few years before he became a rookie in the league and won the AHL MVP. It was only a handful of games that he played, but he had a vision. He has an on-ice vision, ability to find the man, make the open play, that I think elevates him. And that's why him and Stakehoven are so good. Stakehoven has that shot, has a lot of shots, as we've seen in the preseason, right? Yeah. That's not to say Bourque can't finish, but he's a passer, he's a center, right? And that ability to find his man on the ice, to find the open space, to make room in the play. I'd say that's part of what I'm looking for them. And the thing that I'll also mention that I think doesn't get enough credit in the entire thing is I think it's important that they pair him and Stankoven with someone like Jamie Benn.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the way that their lineup was structured in Cedar Park here, Curtis McKenzie, the captain of the Texas Stars, longtime Texas Star, was their third line mate, their left winger. And he has a type of game that clears out space for guys, that goes to the dirty areas, gets in front of the net, all those sorts of things. And that veteran presence was really important for them. And you look at the type of game that Jamie Benn plays, the veteran presence that he has, obviously, it's a really good mapping of what you could have with Curtis and then with Jamie Benn. And also, I'll also note that when the Texas Stars saw Logan Stankoven recalled, you thought, oh, maybe are we gonna have a dip in Mavrik Bourque's performance? He kept going, but then there was a dip, and you're like, what is that? You kind of look at the numbers, and I was working with Sean Shapiro at the time, and I pinged him. I was like, why don't you take a look at his numbers with and without Curtis McKenzie, who had just gotten injured?
Oh,
and it wasn't Stankoven that led to the dip in Bourque's numbers. It was Curtis McKenzie. So interesting that gets forgotten a lot of times in the mix of the Dallas levels, but that third person on their line can have a big impact on them. So I really am looking forward to, if it ends up being Ben, I think it's a really, really good match for them based on what I've seen here in Cedar Park.
Yeah, Ben is sort of the de facto just throw him with the youngsters now.
Yeah.
It feels like he's played with Johnston, Stankoven last year, and Johnston the year previous, and it works out perfectly. He can sort of be the father of the group, and he can always tame the opponent. Like, no one's gonna mess with a young guy when Jamie Benn's on the ice. Got no visor, and he's staring visual daggers at you, so you got to be careful. And you mentioned like a McKenzie, the one guy can be all that you need to sort of unlock your potential. And I think you can kind of make some comparisons with Duchesne last year coming in, and he slid in next to Sagan and Marchment. And all of a sudden that trio was one of the most consistent lines for Dallas last year. And Marchment and Seguin just could not find that winger that they needed to really, I guess, unleash their potential. The year previous, Duchesne comes in and then boom, it seems to click. So you might be spot on that with, McKenzie being out, and then Bourque's not quite as potent as he was. Kyle Capobianco, he's really interesting. So he comes over in the offseason, was in Manitoba in the Jets organization, and the first preseason game, I believe it was, and I'm watching, I'm like, well, I can see why he's played some NHL games. He's got some skill on the back end, and he scores a lot of points on the back end. What is it about him that maybe you're intrigued about coming in and joining this Texas Stars team that has some good players on the back end? I think it'll be exciting with Bichsel, Petrovic, and now him added to the mix.
Yeah, Capobianco for me is a really interesting ad. If you didn't know, he won the AHL Best Defenseman Award last year. This the Eddie Shore Award is what it's called. Most points, most assists in the AHL. We've gotten to see him for quite a few years because before he was with Manitoba, he was with Tucson, which is in Texas division, and we play them a lot here in Cedar Park. I think it's really interesting because he fills a gap that departed with Derek Pouliot and Gavin Bayreuther are leaving the organization. So they've signed elsewhere, and they were more of offensive defensemen. And Alex Petrovic had a bit of a renaissance a couple years ago when he was paired with Ryan Shea. That was a good, weird offense-defense pair. Not what you expect, but Alex Petrovic really elevated his game there by learning from the young kid in some ways on offense, which was a really neat renaissance for him. But I think Capobianco provides a really interesting offensive flair for that back end group. You look at a guy like Christian Kyrou, for example. What's his example? Who's his exemplar he's going to look up to and learn from if he's going to be manning the blue line on the power play, for example? I imagine Capobianco will be on one. Who's on two, right? Is it Kyrou? And then, or are they paired together? Texas usually runs a 4-1, like umbrella type style, but you never know based on personnel every year to year. So I think that's a really interesting model where you're looking at, okay, this is my veteran that I want to model my game after and learn more things about. And then the other thing that I would throw in there is Bichsel paired with Capobianco, or does he get paired with Petrovic? I think it's one of the veterans. Probably, although you could make an argument, maybe you pair him with one of the kids. Maybe he's NHL ready. But it kind of helps you figure out how are you pairing. If you pair him with Petrovic, you see him as more of an offensive guy. You pair him with Capobianco, maybe you're seeing him as more of a defensive guy, right? You kind of have an offense and defense on each line that way. So it's going to be interesting to see as the games start up, because we probably won't see them in camp until the very end. They'll get assigned just before the first games here in Texas. Some of the last assignments with Bichsel for sure. We'll see what they do on opening night and how those pairings work out. Nothing's set in stone though, and these things can change. You never know, knock on wood, how injuries and things can happen. But that's one of the interesting storylines for me with Capobianco is what is his pairing here in Texas?
Well, sounds a lot like what we're thinking here in Dallas as well. What are the pairings going to
Absolutely
look like? That's always the question. Like, who's going to be paired with who? Where's Miro going to play? Hopefully on his strong side. And he looked good the other night, along with Matt Dumba. So a lot of good things on the horizon. Let's do a short little preview. I want to talk about the Texas Stars, just their season, maybe a player to watch that's not Stankoven or Bourque this time around. Got some maybe new fresh faces in. To take a peek at next season. We'll do that in just a moment. Today's episode of Locked On Stars is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. NFL is for Sundays, and we got to watch the Dallas Cowboys squeak out an ugly win over New York last night. Usually that was reserved for a beatdown of the Giants. This time they just squeak out a win, and Dallas is struggling, but that's okay. You don't have to struggle with FanDuel. When you get that hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, America's #1 sports book. Go ahead and download FanDuel. It's free. It's available on the App Store and Google Play Store. Go to FanDuel.com. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I do want to ask you, what has made Texas just really successful over the past few seasons? It feels like they're always winning and they're always in the mix. And I don't think it's a coincidence either that the Stars are sort of following suit, right? Maybe it's a top-down mentality, but and you did allude to it earlier, just the culture that it's kind of being set. But it just feels like every year they're really high quality, and they're making deep runs, and they're always in the mix. From your perspective, what have you seen maybe over the last 7 to even 10 years, the change in Cedar Park?
The AHL has become a league that is more, the NHL is paying more attention to the way that their AHL teams develop. Mm-hmm. Just after Texas won the Calder Cup, they also got bought by the Dallas Stars. And when I started covering the league in 2009, maybe 10 out of the 20, it was like 26 or so teams in the league were owned by an NHL affiliate.
Wow.
Now it's over half. Mm-hmm. And also, by the way, there are 32 teams matching the 32 teams in the NHL. There were some shared affiliations and those sorts of things. So the level of importance of the AHL has increased across the entire league for every single team. Many more teams own their AHL affiliates. Many more of them are staffing them with a large number of coaches. When Texas started, they had a head coach, Glenn Gulletson, and an assistant coach, Paul Girard. That was it. Yeah. Right? Now there are 2 assistant coaches on the bench. They've got a video coach. They've got skills coaches coming in. They've got goalie coaches, all those things. So the level of investment that Dallas has put in, but also all teams have put in across the league, has raised. I would say for Dallas specifically, they have always treated, since they've come in, the Texas Stars as an important part of the overall winning culture. Mm-hmm. They spend money on the AHL team through their signing of 2-way contracts. There are certain players who you saw signing announcements for over the summer on 2-way deals who will never play an NHL game in Dallas. May never play an NHL game ever, right? But they are veteran players who are important to the development of a Mavrik Bourque, right? Yeah. Again, I love my guy, pointing back to Curtis McKenzie. Yes. He is he's not even on an NHL contract this season. He's on his AHL deal. But the money to sign that AHL deal, to make a 2-year commitment to Curtis McKenzie, which 2-year deals in the AHL are not very common. Most deals are 1-year deals. To make that commitment, that shows commitment to the prospects. And you're going to get the right veterans to make sure that you win. Signing a guy, like a Capobianco, who, can come in and play. He's played, 70-something games at the NHL level, but he's probably going to play most of the season in the AHL, score just a bucket of points and keep you in games and hopefully, send them into the playoffs here in the Central Division. I think that's the important level, is like the investment. And that investment comes back, as you mentioned, because Cal Capobianco is going to teach Lian Bichsel something this year. Alex Petrovic is going to teach Lian Bichsel something this year. And 8 years from now, when Lian Bichsel is still playing for the Dallas Stars, that is going to be bearing fruit still. So that level of investment is early on, is what bears that fruit later on.
Yeah, that's great stuff. I love hearing the insights there, and it creates the winning culture, of course. That when they get up to the NHL level, it's expected, right? And we looked at Dallas probably about a decade ago now. Well, I mean, I know they won the division that year, but before that time, it wasn't necessarily expected that they won. They were going through a rough patch, and it's sort of slowly built since then, which is great. So I love hearing that about the investment of the AHL in general. And I think it's important for the NHL to do that as well, because it really markets your young players. And, here in Dallas, we've been spoiled a bit with some of the prospects that have come through, like Stankoven and Bourque. But you look at like college football, and that is sort of the minor leagues of the NFL and how big that is. So the players once they get on an NFL team. You already know them. They've already been brought to you. And that's something AHL can be huge for, is those prospects that go down there. Not everybody's 18, like Celebrini or 19 or whatever, and he can come in and just and play right away.
Takes time.
Yeah, it does take time.
I have to give credit to the Dallas fans.
Yeah.
They have done an incredible job of learning more about the AHL, getting involved. The number of Dallas folks that follow me and talk to me and want to know more, have interest. They're like, oh, I've been following Oscar Beck for years. It's like, wow, that wouldn't have happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There weren't as many ways to follow the players, but also there wasn't really a lot of interest. But now they've seen these players come up. They know how important it is for them to develop in the AHL. And not to mention, it's only a 3-hour drive down 35 to come watch a game. It's a good, fun game experience. Come see a game sometime, say hi, by the way, if you do, on Twitter, if you're here, I'll come say hello. But that's the cool thing, is like that connection and the closeness has created a connection and closeness with the fans that then grows over years as they get to see these players go from draft to all-star.
Yeah, that's why I was so happy we could get you on to talk about Texas and what they've done, because I have people in my comments all asking me about some of these prospects, and I don't see them consistently as much as I would like. And you're there, so you provide such a great perspective. So I really appreciate you coming on, and the Texas Stars too. Their marketing department, I think, won some awards, and the game presentation did. Like, it's just a great product in general. I'll hit you with one final question. Is there a player, maybe an under radar guy that you're looking at for next season, that maybe you've been keeping your eye on for years now, and he's finally there where you can dissect every bit of his game for next season?
There's two guys. I'll throw one on forward, one on defense, just real
Perfect.
quick. You've seen both of them here in the preseason for Dallas. They are not guys I've had my eyes on for years. They're guys who were free agent signings. They came in as ATOs last year, and Texas does this a lot. They'll sign a guy to an amateur tryout after they finish their college career or a junior career. They weren't drafted. They find a guy, they like him in the scouting ranks, they throw him in, and then a lot of times these guys get Dallas contracts pretty quickly thereafter. The one on forward is Justin Ritskovian. He was a guy who came in. He's played in the preseason now for Dallas. At one point, he was the only true centerman that Texas had on the roster with all the injuries that they had last season. He performed admirably, good on the faceoff dot. I think he could have a possibility to be like one of those Oscar Beck type players in a couple of years, where he could be in the conversation for bottom six, defensively responsible, all those sorts of things. So that's one that I would mention. The other one is Luke Krys. Luke Krys on defense, guy. I think he's going to line up for tonight's game, actually, against Colorado, if I remember correctly. He is on defense. He came in, again, ATO signing. I saw some really good, solid, stout work from him in limited time. Unfortunately, he was injured at the very end of the season in the Milwaukee series, so he didn't get to finish out that series. But I'm interested to see how he grows and develops on a Dallas contract now over the course of this season. Defensemen generally take longer for what it's worth. However, good guy that you probably haven't heard the name of a lot, to just kind of maybe put a star by and see if he's somebody who's going to be able to come in and make a difference on D for the Texas Stars.
Awesome. I'm interested in Cole Lind. That's the player I want to throw out there.
That's a good one too.
Yeah,
Cole Lind is interesting.
Looks. Okay, yeah, he's had some good looks in the preseason. And he, correct me if I'm wrong, he had a really good year in Coachella Valley last year.
Yep, he had a really great year, and also Cameron Hughes also was in Coachella Valley, I believe. And the two of them, I don't know if there's going to be any chemistry there.
Yeah,
they put them on the same line, anything like that. Hughes, Lind, and Capobianco, I think, were three really big, high-profile, quality AHL-bound signings who can also be that tweener role to the NHL. And again, this is what we talked about, Joey. This is the fact that they're signing guys who are going to probably play in the AHL, but could play in the NHL, and are going to be an investment in the future of your prospects. You're going to win games today because of these players, but also they're going to teach your prospects things that they're going to use in Dallas for the rest of their career. That's what you do in Texas to make sure that the Dallas Stars win a Stanley Cup.
Man, Steve, you got me fired up for this year. Thank you so much.
Exciting.
It really is. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to get to talk to you, and maybe we can get together a few times during the season as well. It's the first time you've come on here on Locked On Stars. I'm gonna have to get you again. Thank you so much for taking the time and work with my crazy schedule. I've been on a bus the last 8 days. It's just been crazy stuff. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Well,
thank
we'll
you
always
once
find
again.
time to talk about Texas Stars. It's a lot of exciting stuff.
Absolutely. Tell people where they can maybe find your work and what you're doing. I know 100 Degree Hockey is fantastic, so let them know where to find all the great stuff you guys do. And you got a great staff as well. It's not just you. I'm sure that's changed a bit over the years.
Yeah, we're growing the staff this year. Going to start introducing some of the new staff writers this week. So excited about that. On 100degreehockey.com, 100degreehockey.com. You can follow me on Twitter/X as well, 100 Degree Hockey, for game reports and things like that. In the scrum, getting quotes from Coach Graham and all the players, and finding out how they feel about different things that are going on. With the staff writers, looking to also do more feature work this year. You mentioned the business success that the Texas Stars had. They had the most sellouts in team history last year. They had 11 sellouts out of their 36 home games. Pretty darn good for a hockey team in Central Texas.
Yes.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how they did that, some of the awards they won over the summer for their marketing work and their business work. So excited about some of the stories we're going to get to tell this year.
Awesome. Well, make sure to check out 100 Degree Hockey. And that'll wrap up today's episode of Locked On Stars. Thank you so much for the love and support over the recent episodes. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Never miss an episode of Locked On Stars, because I get great guests sometimes, like Steven Meserve. I need to get more guests as we go, so people don't have to listen to me just ramble a lot. But thank you once again, Steven. You have a great rest of your day, and so do you, Stars fans. Have a great weekend. We got Stars Avs tonight, and then we got Stars Wild on Sunday, as the preseason is almost over already, if you can believe it. Kind of wraps up rather quickly. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you on Monday. So long, Stars fans.